clutching her arm, a manager still yelling, still towering over her, and 3 small children running from the shade of a nearby tree, terrified by their mother's screams. And in that moment, the road fell silent, except for the ticking of hot engines cooling and the shallow breaths of a man who had just realized he had made a terrible mistake, because the lead biker removed his helmet slowly, deliberately, and asked in a calm voice that somehow carried more threat than shouting ever could, "Is there a reason you're putting your hands on her?" And the manager stuttered, trying to explain, trying to justify himself. But his words sounded hollow even to his own ears as more bikers dismounted, forming a loose circle, not aggressive, not touching anyone, just present, undeniably present. And the woman backed away toward them instinctively, as if her soul recognized safety before her mind could catch up. And one of the female riders knelt to her level, offering water, offering a gentle smile, while another biker handed the kids protein bars from his saddlebag, telling them it was okay, they were safe now. And something about that, about how easily kindness flowed from strangers who looked dangerous, broke the woman, and she sobbed openly, the sound raw and unfiltered. And the manager's face shifted from anger to fear to something like shame, because for the first time he was being seen, truly seen, not as a man with authority, but as a bully exposed in the daylight and the lead. Biker didn't threaten him, didn't raise his voice, didn't lay a finger on him. He simply said that they had all just witnessed what happened, that many of them wore body cams, that several were off-duty cops, firefighters, EMTs, veterans with nothing to lose but their patience for injustice, and that if the manager wanted to keep his job, his dignity, and his freedom, he would start by apologizing and then do the right thing. And the diner owner, who had been in the back office watching on the security monitor, came rushing out, pale and shaking, because he knew exactly how this would look when the footage hit the internet, when the story spread, when America saw a hungry mother attacked for asking for food, and he fired the manager on the spot, his voice cracking as he begged the woman's forgiveness, insisting that this was not who they were, that he would make it right. And the bikers watched silently as he packed up a box with hot meals, drinks, snacks, enough food for days, refusing payment when one of the riders tried to hand over cash. And then something unexpected happened, a twist no one saw coming, because as the woman thanked them through tears, the lead biker recognized her last name from an old dog tag she wore around her neck, a name that belonged to a soldier who had saved his life in Fallujah and never made it home. And the air shifted again as realization washed over him, because this wasn't just any mother. She was the widow of a hero, a man who had died so others could live. And the bikers stood straighter, quieter, as if in a sacred space. And the lead biker told her who he was, told her about her husband's bravery, told her that his children would never go hungry again if he had anything to say about it. And what followed wasn't charity but community, because one rider was a mechanic who offered to tow and fix her car for free. Another had connections to a local veterans support group. Another knew a landlord with a spare apartment. And within hours, a situation that had begun with cruelty transformed into something powerful, something American at its core. The idea that ordinary people can stand up and change the course of someone's life. And as the sun dipped low and the bikers prepared to ride out, the woman stood taller than she had when the day began, her children laughing with full bellies, her eyes no longer hollow, but burning with gratitude and hope. And the diner owner posted a sign the next day that read, "No one leaves hungry," a promise born from shame but kept with pride. And the fired manager would later try to defend himself online, only to disappear under the weight of public outrage when the footage went viral, when millions shared the story, when Americans from every state sent donations, job offers, letters of support, and when the woman, once invisible, became a symbol of quiet strength. And the bikers? They rode on, as they always did, not looking for praise, not waiting for thanks, just carrying the knowledge that sometimes the road brings you exactly where you're needed, and that the roar of engines can sound a lot like justice when it arrives at the right moment. And if this story moved you even a little, if you believe kindness should always be louder than cruelty, then subscribe now and stay with us. Because there are more stories like this, stories where humanity wins, where help comes from unexpected places, and where no one who asks for food for their children should ever stand alone again. At the very start of your video. Before this story begins, hit subscribe right now, because the moment you hear what happened when a desperate mother asked for food for her children and the wrong man chose cruelty instead of kindness, you'll understand why millions of Americans believe justice sometimes arrives on two wheels and a roar of engines. She only asked for food for her children, and it should have been the simplest, most human request in the world, the kind that stops time for a second and forces you to remember that beneath uniforms, job titles, and daily routines, we are all just people trying to survive. But on that blistering afternoon in a fading roadside diner just off a forgotten stretch of highway, compassion was in short supply and cruelty came far too easily because the woman who stepped inside didn't look like someone who belonged there, not to the man behind the counter at least. Her clothes worn thin from too many washings, her shoes scuffed from miles of walking, her eyes carrying the exhausted fear of a mother who had already made too many impossible choices. And when she spoke, her voice shook as she explained that her car had broken down miles back, that she had 3 kids waiting under a tree in the shade with empty stomachs and dry mouths, that she wasn't asking for money, only a little food. Maybe leftovers, maybe something that would have been thrown away anyway. And for a brief moment, the diner fell quiet, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. But the manager, a thick-necked man with a red face and a permanent scowl carved by years of bitterness, didn't see a mother, didn't hear a plea, didn't recognize himself in her desperation. Instead, he saw a problem, an inconvenience, a threat to his sense of control, and he laughed, a sharp, ugly sound that sliced through the silence, telling her to get out, telling her they weren't a charity, telling her people like her were always looking for handouts. And when she tried again, quieter now, voice cracking, explaining that her children hadn't eaten since the night before, something snapped inside him. Because instead of turning away or calling the police like a coward, he came around the counter, grabbed her arm, and shoved her toward the door, his fingers digging into her skin as she stumbled, dropping the small backpack she carried, the one with all her kids' spare clothes inside. And she cried out, not in anger, but in pure fear, the kind that comes when you realize the world can be merciless, and you are standing alone in it. And that was when the sound began, faint at first, like distant thunder rolling across the plains. A low rumble that made the windows tremble and the silverware on the tables vibrate, and the manager scoffed, still shouting, still dragging her toward the door, unaware that outside, the road he thought was empty had become something else entirely. Because coming down that highway was a convoy of motorcycles, dozens of them, black and chrome, leather and steel, men and women riding in tight formation, their vests stitched with patches that told stories of wars fought overseas, of brothers lost and found again on the open road. And at their head rode a man with gray in his beard and fire in his eyes, a former Marine who had learned long ago that strength meant protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. And as they pulled into the gravel lot, one by one, engines growling like a pack of wolves, the door of the diner flew open as the woman was shoved outside, nearly falling to her knees, and the sight that greeted the bikers froze them in place, a crying mother,